Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really interesting look into a vital part of modern medicine, the global market for tyrosine kinase inhibitors. You probably know them as TKIs.
That's right.
We've got our hands on a detailed 2025 market report, and, well, our mission here is to pull out the really crucial insights for you.
Yeah, try to make sense of it all.
Exactly. Think of it as getting the core understanding, but also those interesting details that give you the bigger picture. We'll be looking at market size, growth projections, what's driving it, and how things look in different parts of the world.
And hopefully we can unpack what this all means, not just the numbers, like why TKIs are important, how they're changing cancer treatment, and what this market data might hint at for the future.
Okay, good plan. Let's dive right in then. How big is this market and where is it headed? What are the sort of headline figures?
So the report projects the global TKI market at USD 69.24 billion in 2025.
69 billion. Okay, that's substantial.
It is. But the really striking part is the forecast. It's expected to jump significantly, reaching USD 134.96 billion by 2033.
Wow, that's nearly double.
Yeah, it represents a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR of 8.70% between 2025 and 2033. So it's not just big, it's growing fast.
Okay, 8.7%. That's definitely strong growth. It suggests something fundamental is happening.
Absolutely. It's more than just sales figures. It really points to a big shift in how we approach treating some major diseases.
So what are the main things pushing this growth? Doubling in, what, 8 years?
Well, there are a few key drivers. First off, unfortunately, we're seeing a rising prevalence of the cancers where TKIs are particularly effective.
Okay.
The report singles out chronic myeloid leukemia, CML, also lung cancer, and breast cancer. As more people are diagnosed with these, the demand for effective treatments like TKIs just naturally goes up.
That makes sense, sadly. More diagnoses mean more need for therapies. What else is contributing?
Another really big factor is the increasing precision in cancer treatment itself. TKIs are what we call targeted therapies.
Right, I've heard that term.
Yeah, so think of it like this. Older chemotherapy often acts more like a broad spectrum attack, hitting lots of fast-growing cells, healthy ones included.
Okay.
TKIs, though, are designed to be more like guided missiles. They specifically target the abnormalities, the specific drivers within the cancer cells that make them grow.
Much more focused then.
Exactly. And that targeted approach often means better results and potentially fewer of the harsh side effects you see with traditional chemo. So doctors and patients are increasingly opting for them when appropriate.
So it's a mix of rising need and actually having better, more targeted tools available.
Precisely. And then there's the innovation aspect. You can't ignore that. The report mentions the growing number of FDA approvals for new TKIs, plus more funding going into research.
Any recent examples?
Yeah, actually, just last year, 2024, in June, the FDA approved repotrectinib. That's for NTRK-positive solid tumors, basically cancers with a specific genetic marker. And then in October, asciminib got accelerated approval for newly diagnosed Philadelphia chromosome-positive CML, again, targeting a specific genetic abnormality in CML. These approvals really show how dynamic the field is. New options are constantly coming through the pipeline.
Those examples definitely paint a picture of rapid progress. Now, the report apparently singles out one area as growing particularly fast. Which segment is that?
Yes, it identifies the lung cancer category as the fastest growing segment.
Lung cancer. Why specifically?
It's largely down to the success of TKIs targeting what are called EGFR mutations in non-small cell lung cancer, or NSCLC.
EGFR mutations.
Okay.
Think of EGFR as like a specific on switch that's stuck in the on position in some lung cancer cells, telling them to grow and divide uncontrollably.
Got it.
These TKIs are designed to specifically block that switch. It's a really prime example of personalized medicine finding the specific vulnerability in a patient's cancer and hitting it directly. It often leads to much better outcomes for those patients. That really does highlight the power of understanding the specific genetics of a tumor.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and look at the geography. How does this market look around the world? Where's the biggest piece of the pie?
Right now, North America holds the largest share. The report says over 37% of the global market.
Over a third. What does that translate to in dollars?
For 2025, it's estimated at USD 25.62 billion, and the growth forecast there, the CAGR through 2033, is around 7.5%.
Okay, 7.5%, and within North America.
The U.S. is the dominant force, naturally, about $20.21 billion in 2025, growing at 7.3%. Then you got Canada at roughly 3.07 billion, but growing a bit faster actually at 8.3%. And Mexico around 2.33 billion with an 8.0% CAGR.
Interesting. So Canada and Mexico showing slightly higher growth rates within that large North American market. What about across the Atlantic and Europe?
Europe's the second biggest market, holds over 29% share, according to the report. That's about USD 20.08 billion in 2025. And the overall projected CAGR is similar to North America, 7.5%.
Okay. Any standouts within Europe? Yeah, there's some interesting variation there. The UK, for instance, is projected to grow at 8.3%. Same as Canada, with a market size around 3.37 billion. Germany is also strong, 3.98 billion, going at 7.7%.
Right.
But then you look at France, it's a bit lower, projected at 6.7% growth on a 1.85 billion market. Russia is around 3.11 billion, growing at 6.5%, and Italy about 1.73 billion, growing at 6.9%.
So quite a range of growth rates across major European countries.
Yeah.
Suggests different dynamics at play, maybe adoption rates or healthcare systems.
Exactly. Different speeds of uptake, perhaps different reimbursement environments.
Okay, let's head east now. The Asia-Pacific region, APAC. What's the story there?
Now this is where things get really dynamic. APAC holds about 24% of the market currently, so USD 16.62 billion in 2025.
But the growth.
The growth is the highest globally, a projected CGR of 11.5%.
11.5%, wow.
Yeah, and within APAC, China and India are really driving that. China's market is estimated at nearly 7 billion USD in 2025, growing at 11.0%.
Still double digits.
And India, though smaller, currently at about 1.66 billion, has a projected CAGR of a remarkable 13.4%.
13.4%. That's huge.
It really is. It highlights massive expansion in these large developing economies. It signals, maybe a potential shift in where the big growth and perhaps even future innovation focus might be headed.
Absolutely. Those APAC figures, especially India's growth rate, are eye-opening.
Yeah.
What about the other regions? South America, Middle East, Africa? They're smaller markets overall, I assume?
They are smaller, yes, but still showing significant growth. South America accounts for just over 3.8%, about 2.63 billion in 2025, but with a strong 9.1% projected CAGR.
9% is still very healthy growth.
Definitely. Brazil is key there, growing at 9.7%, and Argentina actually hitting 10.0% CAGR.
Right.
The Middle East has around 4% share. There's a slight note here. The text mentions both USD 2.77 billion and USD 5.60 billion for 2025, which seems like a discrepancy in the source data, but the CAGR is given as 9.2%.
Okay, we'll note that potential data point issue, but still strong growth projected around 9.2%. Key countries.
Saudi Arabia and the UAE are highlighted, with growth rates around 9.5% and 9.7% respectively.
Right. And Africa.
Africa holds about 2.2% share, roughly 1.52 billion in 2025, with an 8.4% CAGR. South Africa is mentioned specifically, growing at 9.3%.
So even the currently smaller regions are posting growth rates higher than, say, the U.S. or parts of Europe. That's fascinating. Reflects maybe catching up, increasing access.
Probably a mix of factors, yeah. Economic development, improving healthcare infrastructure, greater awareness and availability of these advanced treatments.
Okay, that gives us a great global overview. Let's pivot back to the drugs themselves. Which specific areas, which applications are most significant right now?
Well, the report suggests that chronic myeloid leukemia, CML, is likely still dominant in terms of market share.
And why CML?
It really comes down to the incredible success TKIs had right from the start with CML. They target that specific BCR-ABL protein, the key driver in most CML cases.
Right, the Philadelphia chromosome thing you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. TKIs targeting that have just transformed CML treatment, making them the standard first-line therapy and leading to much, much better outcomes for patients. So it's a big established market.
Makes sense. But you mentioned lung cancer earlier as the fastest growing.
Yes. So while CML might be the biggest slice currently, lung cancer is where the most rapid expansion is happening. That's driven by those EGFR targeting TKIs and non-small cell lung cancer we discussed.
Personalized medicine really kicking in there.
Absolutely. And the report also mentions other significant applications like breast cancer and renal cell cancer where TKIs are making an impact.
So CML is the historical success story, but lung cancer is driving a lot of the current growth momentum. Now, how do these drugs actually get to patients? Distribution channels.
Currently, hospital pharmacies have the largest market share.
What is that?
It's often because initiating TKI therapy especially requires close monitoring. You need medical supervision, managing potential side effects, maybe dose adjustments. Hospitals are set up for that.
Okay, that makes sense for starting treatment.
Exactly. But the report also points out that online pharmacies are growing very rapidly in this space.
The convenience factor.
Convenience, yes, but also the broader trend towards digital health. Think telemedicine consultations, electronic prescriptions, home delivery. It's all becoming much more common, and online pharmacies fit right into that ecosystem.
So a shift maybe from purely hospital-based to a mix including more direct-to-patient online channels. Interesting. Now, every market has challenges. What's holding back TKI growth, or what are the potential breaks on this?
The report highlights two main restraints. First is cost. These are advanced, often complex therapies, and they come with a high price tag.
Yeah, that's often the case with cutting-edge treatments.
It really is. And that high cost can be a major barrier to access, especially in lower-income countries, or even for patients in wealthier nations without good insurance coverage. Affordability is a big issue.
A critical challenge. What's the second restraint?
The second is the development of drug resistance. Cancer cells are incredibly adaptable, unfortunately. Over time, even with effective TKIs, the cancer can develop mutations or find ways around the drug's mechanism. The TKI stops working as well, or stops working altogether. That limits long-term effectiveness for some patients.
So cost limits access and resistance limits long-term effectiveness, both significant hurdles. What about positive trends shaping the future? What should we be watching?
Well, one major trend is that ongoing push towards personalized medicine we've touched on. As we get better at understanding the specific molecular details of each person's cancer,
We can choose the TKI more precisely.
exactly, using genetic testing or other diagnostics to match the right TKI to the right patient based on their tumor's specific profile. That trend is only going to get stronger.
Makes sense.
And related to the resistance problem, there's a huge amount of research focused on overcoming it.
How so?
Developing next-generation TKIs that work against known resistance mutations, exploring combinations of TKIs or TKIs with other types of drugs, figuring out optimal sequencing of treatments. Lots of strategies are being investigated.
So the field is actively trying to stay one step ahead of the cancer's ability to adapt.
That's the goal, absolutely.
Okay, this has been a really insightful look into the TKI market based on that report. To sort of wrap things up, what are the main takeaways you think our listeners should hold on to?
I'd say first, the global TKI market is huge, and it's growing really fast, nearly 9% CAGR projected. Second, this growth is driven by both more cancer diagnoses and, crucially, the shift towards more precise targeted therapies like TKIs.
Right.
Third, while North America is the biggest market now, the fastest growth by far is happening in the Asia-Pacific region, especially China and India. That's a key dynamic to watch. Fourth, application-wise, CML remains a stronghold, but lung cancer is the fastest growing segment, really showcasing that personalized medicine trend. And finally, despite all the promise, cost and drug resistance remain significant challenges that the field is actively working to address.
That sums it up perfectly. It's clear TKIs are a cornerstone of modern oncology, but the landscape is constantly evolving. So here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on.
Okay.
Considering that explosive growth we're seeing in APAC and the global focus on personalized medicine, how might things change? Think about advances in genetic testing becoming cheaper or more widespread, or maybe more local drug manufacturing popping up in those high-growth Asian countries. How could that affect the accessibility and the cost of these vital drugs worldwide?
That's a big question.
And also, what new strategies might we see emerge to really tackle that drug resistance problem head-on and push patient outcomes even further? It's a complex picture, definitely, but one packed with potential for the future. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.